call this meeting to order. I'd ask that our superintendent lead us in our invocation of prayer.
Father, we just thank you for your grace and mercy, and just thank you for the blood of Christ and forgiveness of our sins. Lord, we just ask that you be with us today and that we lean upon you and look to you for wisdom and guidance, Lord, in the decisions that we have to make, and may we always make the decisions we make in the best interest of our children, our schools, and the district. Thank you, Lord, for all you do for us, and thank you, Lord, now and in the future. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this time I'll accept the motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. If there's no objection, we'll pass that by general consent. Seeing none, agenda is adopted. I do not see any visitors out there today, so welcome anyway, but we're going to dispense with that at this time. I'll now turn it over to our superintendent who called this special meeting.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you each have we're here today to consider two contracts for the sale of the Wilson High School property. One of them is from Blue Rock, and that is the company that we...
Hello?
Hey, is this Denise?
It is.
All right, Denise, we're live.
Hi.
Okay, so you have two contracts on here. One is from Blue Rock, and that is the company that we originally had a contract with. And there is, that one now is for $1.750 million, and the other one is from another group for $1.1 million. There's a couple of differences in the contract. And Cookie, are you there?
I am. I'm having some difficulty hearing you.
Okay.
I am as well.
Okay, Cookie, can you kind of talk to us about the contracts and the differences?
I'm like Denise, we're having there's a lot of background noise for some reason. But what was your question?
Cookie, I think they were wanting you to go over the two contracts and the dates and general terms.
Okay. Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So contract one from Blue Rock, which is the resubmission, for the 1.75 what Jeff went over. So I spoke to them yesterday, and do you all have a copy of the timeline that Denise prepared for both contracts?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wanted to want to...
Would you like me to review that right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so contract one, if accepted, we would have an assumed effective date of November 1st. And then they would have an inspection period till January the 30th. And their governmental approval period would end July the 1st with two possible extensions. The contract allows for 2 extensions. So if they optioned on both extensions, that would be August 30th. If they optioned on both extensions, the earliest closing would be, if they used all their time, would be September the 29th. So I spoke to them about that because of the concern about the funds and when they would be encumbered. Their comments were, because they were under contract for 4 months previously, they have done quite a bit of their inspection task already. They're actually planning to go straight into government approval. I have encouraged them that in a small municipality, we're not going to have the difficulties that they typically face in larger metro areas where they wait and wait and wait to get on an agenda to talk about a permit, that we wouldn't have those issues. They do have a anchor that has come back to them and is very, very interested. In fact, the anchor has reviewed the site plan and has requested some tweaking of the site plan. So that their plan is actually in engineering right now, ready to go back to that anchor. Once the anchor is signed, it will move very quickly. They're very optimistic about the anchor signing, and they're very optimistic they could close by June the 30th. They asked me to reiterate that they're as much interested in closing quickly as anybody because they can't start making money on their sites and getting rentals unless they get this thing going. So they will not be delaying any longer than they need to. So that's contract one. Any questions about what I just said?
Ms. Cookie, this is Brad.
Hey.
That's, yeah, so that's, hard, so they'll escrow the same as last time, $10,000, or is it $25,000?
We kind of, what Denise, you're gonna have to remind me that we have retweaked that it's a new contract.
Right, and what we did is we've got the 10,000 going hard after the inspection period, so that becomes non-refundable versus the last time. Then we've got three additional $25,000 deposits. We've got the $25,000 deposit that they put down after the inspection, so their initial 10 goes hard. You've got the additional 25 that goes in place. Then after the governmental approval period, or you've got another 25, and if they follow up with after the governmental approval period, so between that period of time and closing, you've got an additional $25,000.
Non-refundable. Is that non-refundable?
I'm sorry?
Is that non-refundable?
It's not, the 25, you've got 25,000 that is not non-refundable, but they can extend the inspection period. I do want to comment that if as Cookie is indicating, they are already in the process of doing the engineering work, and we are moving forward. If it's possible to get approval subject to a couple of changes, we could potentially remove the extension periods so that they would move quicker, or require, instead of waiting until after the inspection period for them to apply for the governmental permits, we could perhaps require that within 60 days. Cookie, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, they kept restating, once we get this anchor signed, it's gonna move very, very quickly. That's what they said. So I'm sure if they get the anchor signed, they'll be willing to say, we're done with our inspection period, which should have expired January 30th. But if they get the anchor signed, once you sign if you accept this contract and they get the anchor signed, then they would be moving very quickly.
And realistically, it will take at least 90 days probably for them to get the anchor signed, just going back and forth with the long-term lease agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that they will use that.
They ported this anchor in the other 4 months in the first contract, so they've gotten through a lot of stuff with this anchor. And so they're not starting fresh with them. So they had already gotten into a point. But
A negotiation at that point.
Right, yes. So the anchor did not sign within that 120 days of the first contract. So that's the reason they had to back out. And then, of course, the anchor made new contract, got re-interested within 3 or 4 days after that. If you remember, it was very quick. They wanted to resubmit. So I'm hopeful that that time period was well spent with the anchor.
Cookie, can y'all hear us better now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about that contract?
So that is no, you will not get the 25 back, just do the 3 extensions. It's only the 10 that's
Only the 10.
non-refundable.
It is only the 10 that is non-refundable initially,
Thank you.
until after the governmental inspection period.
All right, let's move on to contract 2.
I'm really sorry, I can't, oh, yes, okay, thank you.
You can move to contract 2.
Yes, ma'am.
Contract 2 is with a company called Pizza and Brew Partnership. I did find that LLP. They control other entities in Gainesville and Ocala. I know Denise, you were, initially I couldn't find that LLP, but I did find it on Sunbiz, and I believe they control some commercial in the villages. They control some commercial entities along Archer Road. I called the broker that presented the offer, and this fella would be doing mixed-use development. He is using a 1031 like-kind exchange. He has closed on his property that he has to reinvest within 160 days. So he is not under contract with any other property or speculative properties, because he can have up to 3. And I asked the broker, is he under contract with others? And he said, no, he intends to close on this piece. So I narrowed that down. He has no site plan at this point. So, but only has a 7-day inspection period, so we would know fairly quickly whether he's going to move forward or not. And he wanted to close by December the 1st, which because it was a weekend or a holiday or whatever, Denise has that December the 3rd. My concern is there's no plan for the site. And I have said this to Jeff, if this is something y'all want to accept, I'd like to see some type of contingency that they go ahead and start demolition. I don't want the site to just sit there unoccupied and vacant. I don't think y'all do either.
Ms. Cookie, this is Chris. I guess
Hey, Chris.
my question is, if we did any demo on that, do you see the property value on that increasing? If
I do.
okay.
So, yes, it's always a quote unquote shovel ready site where you've abated, cleaned up, gotten your clean bill of health is going to, it's a value add definitely for any prospective buyer.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cookie.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
looking at the 2 and listening to Ms. Cookie for a minute, the Pizza and Brewery Partnership with no plan in a 1031 exchange concerns me with other dilapidated buildings we have in our community that need to be cleaned up.
Brad, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Let me get closer, Ms. Cookie. Can you hear me now?
Okay, much better.
I just said with other dilapidated buildings in our community that needs to be cleaned up, I have concern with contract number 2 with no focus on what goes, and not only that, the considerable less sum of money for the property. Only issue I have with contract number 1 is I would like to see at those timelines, those monies, so we don't get into a situation where we're just stringing it out, because we have other issues within our district, chiefly in middle high school.
Exactly.
So
And
if there was a way we could make those
I explained
numbers.
that to them.
Yeah, but from my perspective, I have 2 concerns. Number one, my first and primary concern is Joyce Wolf Elementary School. We have to have a good neighbor there. So that's number one. And then number two is for the city of Williston and making sure that whatever we do is good for Williston. And the third thing is that a long-range plan and being able to afford a new Chieftain Middle High School. Because as you know, we're going to have to pledge back our $1.5 million, 1.5 bills for 3 years, and we're going to have to survive on no money. So, or no revenue from the state for 3 years. So that's part of Kim's, we'll be talking about that too in that plan. Yes, sir.
If I may, the guidance that we get from statute is that the board needs to act in the best interest of the taxpayers. That would be sort of the guiding light there.
Cookie, this is Paige. I'm not asking directly, about the name of anything, but, and your knowledge of this contract, is that good for Williston? Is it good for the community? Is it good for taxpayers?
Are you referring to contract number 1 with Blue Rock or
Yes, I
contract
am,
number 2?
contract number 1.
I would, everything that I know thus far, they have a plan that they're excited about developing and bringing, and they are even more excited now that they have this very good prospective anchor.
Thank you.
Chris, you got anything?
Breezy, I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Any idea, ballparking on what demolition costs would be on a site like that?
No, sir. Miss Cookie has researched that some on her end, and we had quotes from,
I can tell you the low is $350,000, the low.
yeah, and that did not include
That's without abatement.
abatement.
Well, and those are, I can't hear whether I'm interrupting, so I apologize for that. But those demolition costs, because the AHERA report, I found out, is all assumed values. No testing has to be done for those reports. So GLE, I think I sent this to Jeff and John, they would charge $15,000 for a real, true asbestos survey, which would be much more definitive. So many times in these old buildings, we assume it's all hot, but it may not be all bad. So those, unless they have an asbestos survey, any quote that you're going to get is going to, they're not going to commit to it. But I would say that it would be, I know they gave us a low price, but I'm going to estimate that it would be $500 or more.
And in your opinion, Ms. Cookie, what would you feel then that piece of property would be valued at or worth? Which I know
I would say between contract 1.7 and 2.
Thank you, Ms. Cookie.
These are, I'll give y'all my opinions on these things. We can go from there with whatever y'all want to do. I like the timeline on contract number 2, because I'm the guy of mind that we're going to get funding for Chieftain High School. We got to get rid of surplus seats. The problem I have with Chieftain High School is this man don't have no plan. He don't have a plan to tear the building down. He don't have any of that. The other thing is it's significantly less than the Blue Rock. Blue Rock appears to have a plan that is beneficial to the community of Williston. I would like them to move faster, but Ms. Cookie says it sounds like they want to move faster than this timeline. I am concerned we've already entered with Blue Rock and then they backed out, but I feel better about it this time because they have a plan. The idea of doing the demolition ourselves, contracting it out, I don't think we will reap any more money for the expense based on, if we spend $500,000 to get the price up $500,000, we haven't done anything. So I lean towards contract number 1. But I will entertain a motion, or we'll ask more questions, whatever y'all would like to do.
Ms. Denise?
And I'm happy to get more information from either party as much as I can get if you have more specific questions.
Ms. Denise, are you there?
I am.
What, you said that there was some tweaking on that, on the contract one. Can you go back over that again? On what?
Well, based upon the information that's been presented, the buyer, number one, would not be required under the contract to submit for governmental approval prior to 30 days following the inspection period. So the inspection period is running until January 30th.
Right.
That's a 90-day inspection period. And then they have until July 1, 2019 to get the governmental approval period, but there's not a requirement that they make application until 30 days after the inspection period. So you could require perhaps that they do that within 10 days or that they do that prior to the end of the inspection period. And see if we could negotiate that point with them so that they would be well within that time, sort of pushing that time period earlier than what's currently in the agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Denise.
I certainly agree with that, pushing that timeline. But the reason that we have this special meeting is because contract number 2, they were on the timeline. But we still had time on contract number 1, is that correct?
But we're here, I mean, when you look at the timeline for special facilities, you're looking at a June 30th date, where we have to sign a document saying these are what our capital funds are. So that's where we're at. So that's the date on the back end if we want to get approved for the following year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we're at, and that's why we need to get this, that's why we moved it up, to have these conversations, to get the contract, see if we can get executing, get the timeline started. That's what time is essential here.
That's a June 1, you said?
June 30th.
So, could we move up the government to April 1?
And just a little bit of difference between this contract.
You're suggesting that we do as Denise suggested and shorten up that period and make them move. I think what she was really suggesting is that they have to begin that approval period sooner.
Right.
That's
Is that a
correct.
possibility?
When did we sign our initial contract?
The very first contract,
Yes, ma'am.
the contract we don't have anymore,
Yes, ma'am.
let's see. That's in the back of my folder.
It was approved May 2018.
Okay.
May 22nd, 2018.
So with that June 30th date, we need to have funds encumbered and that, so.
And that is an educated estimate.
Right.
It may be after that, but that's the end of the fiscal year, and I believe that is the date that I've been given from the people that know.
Gotcha.
But that, at some point, we're going to have to sign a document, and I believe that's going to be the end of the fiscal year.
I might be done with this thing June 1st.
So, my recommendation, So would think that if we did it March 30th, government, and then with an option, one option of 30 days extension, that puts us in that time frame. So,
If I may, what they are realistically going to need is they're going to need probably, again, 60 to 90 days to come to a final agreement with the anchor tenant. They are not going to want to incur major engineering costs on putting together the site plan. They've apparently already undertaken some of that engineering work, but they will not want to undertake significant engineering work until they know for certain that they have the anchor tenant in place. So the thought is that they would have at least 60 days to get that anchor tenant in place, and at least prior to the end of the inspection period, if we were going to tweak this contract at all, perhaps we may want to look at having them apply for the governmental approval prior to the inspection period, and prior to the end of the inspection period, which would be in that first 90 days. So that is,
Which is basically what they said they would be doing. They would probably move right into governmental approval period, but we could actually put that in here.
correct. So having them start that process at least 30 days earlier, and diligently pursue that. The members of the school board and you all as community members would have, I would think, a good opportunity to encourage the people within your county government to move this and facilitate getting the approval sooner rather than later. And again, it is much different than being in Orange County or even in Alachua County. But I think that March would be difficult to meet for a governmental approval period. I don't think that would be possible.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with, I think Blue Rock is probably the right group. I think they're credible in the research that I've done. I think they're probably the right fit for the community. I just don't want us to get into, again, I would be in favor of the contract and pushing it forward to government approval the way that we just discussed. But if any of those extensions are put into place, I would like to see us at each extension that they had to put $25,000 non-refundable at each extension, so that we know that we're not just buying more time. Between then and July 1, we should, under this contract, without tying it up forever, should know if they have their tenant or not. It's just my opinion. That's what I would like to see done, is it's non-refundable at those extensions if they're exercised.
Okay. If you'll excuse me, I'm having some difficulty hearing you, so I want to make sure that Cookie and I are understanding the direction or the information that you're giving. You'd like to see the governmental approval period moved up to maybe March, but still grant extensions, but at those extensions have an additional $25,000 deposit going hard at each of those so that they have more skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because if there's no extension, the way I read that is a closing date of July 1/19. If there's no extensions, and that would go on to August and September. And I don't know with what we were just saying, if that speeds up the final closing or if the governmental approval period just speeds that part of it up. The closing dates will still be the same. The effect would be July 1, right? Even if you sped the other part up?
Well, they indicated that if it all went as planned, they would be able to close by June the 30th. So they're not anticipating having to option as extensions.
Your extension idea makes it a priority to get going.
But if what Ms. Cookie's saying is correct, it's no, because if we close on June
Well,
30th,
Yeah, but we want them focused that whole time to get it done. So this is a reminder, we gotta get it done. Your idea.
I know part of the government approval has been, they've already kind of worked through some things with FDOT as far as access to the site and how they have to do that.
is this just general discussion, or do we need to have action?
I think you need to approve or tentatively approve with conditions a contract, so we can get her done.
We don't need some sort of motion.
I want to approve the contract.
Second.
I would like to see it in contract form and have that in, and I agree with Brad's comments, because to put that 25 hard, and if, it may not even be necessary if we do close by June 30th, which we want to do, that's our goal, our main goal to do
I'd
that.
like to go by
close.
June 1st, but I'm just saying.
Right, certainly, it would be June 1st, so whatever is necessary that we can put in the contract to speed up, which I know in good faith they are trying to do, Cookie, and that's critical, and I know that for their benefit, they will want to do that, but I believe in contracts, and that whatever we can put in there to get that done, that it would be necessary to put it in writing, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If I may.
I agree.
What I think the board is being asked to do today is give direction about which contract they want to go with. We can include, the board can give direction about how, essentially a counter can be put together to contract number 1, if that's the pleasure of the board, with the additional conditions or changes. It could be brought back to the board for final approval, and it would be, of course,
Right.
once Blue Rock had signed off on our alterations.
Based on what I'm hearing here today, I would feel much more comfortable if we could somehow, however you gotta word the contract, to where we shoot for a target closing of June 1st, not June 30th. That's right up against our deadline. June 1st, we do have some wiggle room there. If we shoot for a target of June 1st be closed, and if we have to do these extensions, that's 25 grand to pull, non-refundable. I want to see, that puts skin in the game on that side too, because we've got to move on this thing.
So our direction is contract number 1, and with those stipulations in the contract, and then we can come back after that for approval. We have to have another meeting or whatever we need to do.
Well, we need a motion of a tentative, and then put that forward and we'll vote on the final contract.
So I move that we counter their offer that we see today from Blue Rock, and with the closing date of June 1st, with an extension of July 1st and August 1st, with $25,000 hard money down on both of those extension dates.
Right.
Non-refundable, and then as if they accept that offer, then a final contract be brought back to the board.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Cookie.
Thank
you,
y'all.
Ms. Denise.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, recommendations? Any comments from the board at this time?
Only thing is, I left you.
No. Thank you. No, I'm giving you a hard time. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just left you some information there on the new classifications for sports, so, coming out of the high school activity association that was approved Monday.
I appreciate all your hard work getting Williston in the playoffs. Can't win on the field, but get it in the other way. All right.
I'm gonna leave that right there, Mr. Evans.
I think there might be a big game this week, so.
There is.
If you can figure out a way to get Bronson in there with our record, I'd appreciate that. All right, anything else? Seeing none, we appreciate it. Meeting adjourned.